Welcome to Red Dwarf Season 3. We're just tearing through this one. Normally I'd save any kind of behind-the-scenes sort of commentary for the end, but Season 3 opens with an info dump that's going to need some explaining. First of all, Season 2 ended with Lister becoming pregnant, which they were going to continue with an episode they wrote called Dad, and an animatic of some of it does exist on one of the DVDs. But in the end, they decided they couldn't make it work. So they have this text crawl which goes by too fast to read, but if you care enough to pause and read it, it explains what happened. Basically, Lister gave birth to twin boys, Jim and Bexley, who grew up extremely fast and became 18 years old within a few days, due to being in the wrong universe or something, so Lister had them sent back to the parallel universe so they'd age normally. There's also mention of Crichton having left the ship and crashed, ending up in pieces. After he is rebuilt, they were unable to recapture his former personality. Also, Holly took on Hilly's appearance, which I talked about in the last episode. So there you go, you're caught up. So after a goofy conversation between Lister and Kat about how hot Wilma Flintstone is, we're hit in the face with nearly every big Season 3 change all at once. First is the ship Starbug. It's a lot bigger than the white and blue midgets that we saw in Season 2 and has a much more memorable design. Secondly, Crichton is back and is being played by Robert Llewellyn. And finally, Rimmer has had a rather drastic change in uniform. The creators wanted to visually hint at the idea that he's a hologram by having him wear a uniform that catches the light in interesting ways. By the way, speaking as someone who is attempting to recreate this uniform as a costume for someone, I'm pretty sure it's made out of taffeta, which is kind of hilarious. Anyway, Crichton is about to be tested on how well he can fly Starbug, and it's revealed that Rimmer makes him nervous.
Name? I'll just put Crichton.
Basically, Crichton has reverted back into taking orders from Rimmer due to his having lost his former personality when he was rebuilt. These two have kind of an amusingly dysfunctional relationship. Rimmer loves having someone he can order around, and Crichton hates taking those orders, but he can't help it, and it drives him nuts. Anyway, the joke here is that it's basically like taking a driving test, only with a vehicle that can do a hell of a lot more than a car. Not sure how that works with Rimmer being a hologram, but whatever.
In your own time.
I've failed, haven't I?
Just proceed.
Ease forward.
I love how Starbug made a skidding noise when it turned.
Engage autopilot.
Autopilot engaged. Well, I say autopilot. It's not really autopilot, is it? It's me. It's Muggins here who has to do it.
Girl-type Holly is a bit more snippy than boy-type was.
Stopping distances. You're traveling half the speed of light. What is the stopping distance?
4 years, 3 months.
And the thinking time?
A fortnight.
What's that one?
A time hole.
So while in the middle of a test, a time hole is spotted by everyone but Rimmer.
That is quite obviously a blue giant about to go supernova. That is a time hole. Right, what's this?
So, am I totally nuts in thinking that Rimmer with a hat on looks oddly like Chris Lowe of the Pet Shop Boys? Which is kind of funny because later on his hair looks more like Neil Tennant's. Anyway, all PSB fangirling aside, they end up on a planet that looks very much like 20th century Earth.
What's the time period?
Difficult to pin it down exactly, but according to all the available data, I would estimate it's round about lunchtime, maybe 1:30.
Except that time apparently runs backwards. That would be gross even at forward speed. Nice disguise there, Crichton.
If people see my face, what are they going to think?
Tell them you had an accident. Tell them you took your car to the Crushers and forgot to get out.
Wasn't there a similar joke in the original Star Trek series about Mr. Spock getting his head caught in a rice-picking machine?
I'll switch to reverse mode. 3 brought to life in bank raid.
Anyway, cue some gags about how odd backwards time is.
Oh, it's an advert. Roll off deodorant. Keeps you wet and smelly for up to 24 hours. Here's the jobs page. This looks interesting. Theatrical agent requires novelty acts.
What do we do that's a novelty?
Well, in this world, everything.
Fasten your belt. Hey, I do not need fashion tips from you. Safety belts!
Meanwhile, Lister and Kat have been searching for Rimmer and Crichton for weeks. Isn't Holly also on the ship, and couldn't she have just told them? In any case, They land and apparently Starbug has a cloaking device so it's easy to hide it, which makes me think of Star Trek 4. This episode is so Star Trek-y to me.
Let's take a look around. Maybe they left us a clue or something.
Everybody remember where we parked. Anyway, they don't have Crichton with them to translate, and frankly they're stupid anyway, so they think they're in Bulgaria.
Bye, suckers! You lost your bike!
They get on a bike and it goes backwards for some reason. Honestly, overthinking some of this is making my brain hurt, so I'm gonna try not to point out any more possible inconsistencies.
No, I don't speak any Bulgarian. You speak English?
There's
There's an address ski here, ski. Can you, drop us off, ski?
Hey, hey, hey! We're moving in the right direction now.
Yeah, that's those two in a nutshell.
Welcome to the show!
Anyway, they go to a pub where Rimmer and Crichton are the main act. You'd think the audience would be more grossed out by that.
This is entertainment to these people. The Bulgarian, they have very simple tastes.
We are the sensational reverse fellas, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see you last night.
Now they finally catch on.
This isn't Bulgaria. Look at that menu, unem. It's English, but backwards. Everything's backwards. When in Rome, do the name or do.
Afterwards, it turns out that Rimmer and Crichton don't want to leave, and Rimmer lists everything good about a backwards universe.
You get younger and younger until you become a newborn baby. Then you go back inside your mother, and so on, until eventually we all become one glorious whole.
Remember, you really are one glorious whole.
That's the line of the episode right there.
In 50 years' time, the Second World War will start. Hitler will retreat across Europe, disband the Third Reich, and bog off back to Austria.
And then Lister lists everything that's bad about it.
Oh, Santa Claus, what a bastard. He's just a big fat git who sneaks down chimneys and steals all the kids' favourite toys.
Suddenly their boss comes in and chews them out. Oh, and here's what the actor actually said.
I'm not actually addressing you. I'm addressing the one prat in the country who's bothered to get hold of this recording, turn it round and actually work out the rubbish that I'm saying. What a poor, sad life he's got.
To be fair, it would have taken a lot of work to play that backwards in 1989.
He says we'll never work the pub circuit again.
Anyway, it turns out that they started a fight, which for them hasn't happened yet. So Lister was immediately in pain and had a black eye when they got there, and it's gotten steadily worse. And we're about to find out why.
I'm sorry, man, we just... A black eye. It's gone. Just sucked it off my face with his fist. Now he's just uncracked me ribs.
All this mess, all this debris, this is from the fight we got fired for. This is from a fight we're about to have.
It's not a barroom brawl, it's a barroom tidy. Unrumble!
And the unbrawl commences, resulting in Lister losing all his injuries.
Here's matey, have your tooth back.
That backwards giggle was creepy as hell. They're finally about to leave, but Cat is lagging behind, because he needs to use the bathroom.
We've got to stop him.
Too late.
Don't ask.
And so ends fuck it, backwards. Well, Season 3 sure got off to an interesting start. This was a pretty solid, if weird, episode. Apparently it was a bitch to film. First of all, it was complicated to film backwards back then. They had to use a special camera, and apparently the BBC only had two. Clive Barker probably still had the other one. Not to mention that it had a weird side effect where the noise sounded a bit distorted and echoey. But then there was just all the continuity issues that came up, like remembering all of Lister's injuries in the order they had to have happened in. And here's something interesting. Keeping the Big Bang Theory in mind, there is one possible scenario that after a certain point, the expansion of space will reverse and eventually end with the Big Crunch. This episode was based on that theory, only it added the idea of time overall reversing itself. In fact, only about a year ago there was a new study suggesting that we're approaching the Big Crunch, if approaching means it's still billions of years away. You can decide for yourself if it's a valid theory or not, but naturally talk of this episode came out of the woodwork again, so that was interesting. But anyway, the creators of this show are science geeks, and they like to take actual existing theories, however far-fetched they may seem, and build an episode around it, which I think is kinda cool. As weird as this show is, it's not without a certain amount of credibility. Another interesting thing about Backwards is that it's yet another episode that started out as a novel. I didn't read that one, but from what I understand, they stay in the backwards universe so long that Lister and the cat start aging backwards and become pre-teens at one point. Also, I believe they get rescued by a certain character who doesn't show up until season 4. So from what I gather, this episode has very little in common with the book aside from the general idea of it. Next up is Marooned. See you then.
Why are we talking about going to bed with Wilma Flintstone?
You're right. We're nuts. This is an insane conversation.
She'll never leave Fred, and we know it.